Lastly, for our final week, we're really going to just start looking at those final projects that you will have worked on. Basically, your final project for this course will be developing an intercultural training design. And it'll be iterative, so I'll see different drafts of it as we go. So, and able to give you feedback. So if you're off track or need additional help, I'll be here all along the way to make sure that you could be successful. So that is our syllabus. That is our class. This week, again, I want to spend some time on introductions. I want to get to know you, and I want you to get to know each other. One thing I love about university college courses is that we're all adults, and most of us have significant working experience. And I appreciate when you can apply what we're talking about class and what we're learning to your everyday work or life experiences and then bring those back to class. I think that makes it hugely valuable. That's how you learn from each other so much. And that's how I learn from you too. So I'll be doing the same. Anything I'm applying or stories I have throughout my week, I will bring those back, and I'll bring my lessons learned back to the class. So we'll all do some of that. The readings you have for this week, we've talked a little bit about your text reading. We'll be looking at the history of the field. I'd like you to look at the developmental model of intercultural sensitivity. And I ask you to reflect on that a little bit. It's a little, I feel like the DMIS is a little oversimplified. So I would encourage you to take it with a grain of salt, to look at it for what value you can draw from it, to kind of identify where you are in it, recognizing maybe not all of us are at the last stage. And even if you are, looking back at the process that you went through to get there. So if you do come across a client or somebody who is trying themselves to develop their intercultural sensitivity, what does the process look like that they need to go through to get to that? And that can give us some insight into the training. The Kushner-Bruslin piece looks at a couple of different things and will describe the difference between cultural general and cultural specific, which kind of gives us some labels for our training to fall under. Most of this course will look at culture general training, and that's simply because there's so many different cultures that I don't know how I would pick some to do culture specific, although we'll get into some culture specific training and talk a little bit about what that training would look like and how you would go about it. Kushner-Bruslin also looks at didactic versus experiential, which will give us a little insight into different types of training. Basically, didactic would be something that's lecture style and not as interactive, and experiential would be something that the learners are participants in and are experiencing. So exercises, simulations, things like that would be more experiential, whereas the lecture would be more didactic. And then lastly, the Michael Page reading should give you a good sense of those trainer competencies. And again, please don't get intimidated by all the competencies. I think they're important ones and it's a great list, but nobody, as I think Michael Page says, is an expert in all of those things, and you're not expected to be now, nor are you expected to be at the end of the class, and I would be lying if I said I was an expert in every competency listed in Michael Page's chapter. So wherever we are, it's fine. We're just going to keep building on that. And that's pretty much it. You have a lot of different discussion boards to reflect on because we do want to spend some time introducing ourselves. But our exercise this week, which will kind of expand on that, is the circles of my multicultural self. This exercise is something that you would normally do in person, so the online format is a little different, but I don't see any reason why we can't do it online and have some discussion around it and learn from it. But this is a good example of an intercultural training exercise that can be used, and is a good one to start off with and break the ice. Although you have to be cautious with it because you're asking your participants, and I'm asking you, to share some stories, to share some background about times when you were judged or a stereotype was made about one of your cultural identities, and those can be very difficult. One thing that I ask all of my learners to do, and I would ask you to do too, is as we're having these discussions and reflecting on our own persons and our own biases and our own privilege and our own disadvantages, as we reflect on those things, you want to be careful to protect yourself. And I say that because I think it's sometimes we get into issues and people kind of go into these areas that are very sensitive for them and they haven't worked them out. And not that I don't want you to share those sorts of things. I think they're important and we learn from them. But you just want to be aware of your vulnerability. I think you can count on me and count on your classmates to be respectful, and for me to also manage the discussion. So if I see things that I worry about, how they're affecting one or the other of us, I'll jump in and say something. But at the same time, you want to make sure you don't open up something in your own life that you're not going to be able to close within a discussion, or it's going to hurt you. You just want to be protective of yourself. So I just say that to kind of give that caution. I think it's an important thing for all of you to have, and for us as intercultural trainers to share with our learners. I just think sometimes people start sharing things that they haven't necessarily thought through what they mean or where they're going to go. And if there isn't significant time or significant trust amongst the group to really work through those things together, then that person can be left kind of high and dry without that closure, and it can do some damage. So if you have any questions on that or concerns or things you're thinking about sharing and aren't sure about, feel free to email me and ask me those things. I have had students also who will have a personal experience they don't want to share with the course, but they would like to share with me. So I would welcome that if you're comfortable. And I think that in setting our ground rules for this course in week 1, I'm hopeful that we can set a climate of trust and that we'll all feel okay sharing some of these more personal stories and life stories and life experiences, because I think they'll make for a rich learning experience. But I just kind of want to set out that balance so that we're all cognizant of what we're engaging in. And also, on the flip side, please make sure that you're being respectful of your classmates. And if you hear a story that you think is a personal one and a difficult one to share, just be extra sensitive around that with your comments and your responses and your questions, so that nobody gets put in a bad situation, nobody gets shut down and doesn't want to participate as much or as fully. So just bear that in mind. And again, any questions on that, please give me a shout. So this has been a much longer lecture than planned, but I think it kind of goes through the whole course. I think future weeks' lectures will be a little shorter, but hopefully it gives you a good sense. So I look forward to our discussion this week, and I look forward to the whole course with you. We'll see you online soon.